Hi, folks. Welcome to the fifth edition of Developer Insights. Developer Insights is a video series where I typically talk about some of the things which I can't cover as a part of regular tutorial series that I typically do. So I just was wondering what should I be doing in this particular edition of the Developer Insights. What caught my attention was just recently Stack Overflow completed a survey from the developers. So I thought that this should be really worth sharing with my subscribers. So without further much ado, let's get into what exactly I am talking about. This video has been sponsored by Stevens English Education. We will talk about Stevens English Education a bit more in the later part of the video. So the first important statistic that they talk about is years of experience the person has. Most of the people have less than 5 years of experience, and that basically means programming profession is still a very young man's pursuit. As you become more and more experienced, the group of the professionals who still pursue coding is very small in number. They also show you another statistics about when was the first time you wrote your first line of code. So in other words, it's basically you are talking about when did you write your hello world application. As you can see, once again, it is the western nations, United States, United Kingdom, Russia, Canada, Poland, basically the western world, who start very early to program. And by that standard, Indians are relatively one of the oldest people at the age of 17 to write their first line of code. And in terms of the gender, once again, women tend to be little bit late entry into the programming world than men, and apparently people who usually typically don't conform to the normal gender norms, LGBT community, they seem to get initiated into programming at the very early age. The next part was how many years have passed since you learned coding. Major part of the group here is at least 5 to 9 years of experience. And speaking from the gender perspective, things once again stand in the same region. Even in case of men and women, majority group are in the years of experience up to 9 years. And then in terms of what is the educational attainment that person has done to become a coder, and once again, as expected, it is the bachelor's degree, master's degree. And also in terms of the race and ethnicity, it is still a white and European descent dominated profession, and very next to white and European descent are the Asians, South Asian and East Asian. I think probably the main reason is during the World War II and after World War II, America and Western world invested hugely into science and technology, and they had a very pretty good head start in it. So that is why we see this kind of representation in the programming field. And when it comes to gender, once again, it looks like programming is mainly dominated by men rather than women. And actually, this matches with the kind of traffic that I see on my YouTube channel. This is the demographic split for the viewership of my channel. Once again, it is the people who are in the age group of 25 to 34 who dominate the major viewership on my channel. And if you just go to gender, it is once again dominated by men. Almost 90% of the viewership for my YouTube channel, basically related to programming, is coming from men compared to around 11% which is coming from female gender. Now continuing further, in terms of the age and experience by the country, the average age of people who are doing programming as a profession is mainly in 20s and 30s. Indians are the youngest lot at the age of 25.9, which is around 26 years of age. And as you would expect, the once again the Western countries who are into programming since the very early days of the century, they have much more experienced programmers, and probably that is why the average age there tends to be in the 30s. And in terms of the average years of coding experience, as expected, it is the Western world who tend to be more experienced than India and other countries. So Indians in that sense are the youngest in terms of the average age and also in terms of the overall experience as a programmer, probably the reason is Indians have taken to programming in a relatively recent times. I think probably late 80s or early 80s, I would say. So probably that is why the years of coding experience among the Indians is least compared to other countries. This is a very interesting chart. It basically talks about how developers rate themselves in terms of the competence versus experience. Till almost developer achieves 10 years of experience, they don't rate that much highly of themselves. So they need at least 15 years of experience to consider themselves to be highly competent. And probably after 15 years, the way they rate themselves pretty much remains flat. More experienced you become, you are not arrogant enough to rate yourself very highly. So probably you tend to be very highly critical of yourself, and in terms of the competence, you don't overshoot yourself. So that is why after 15 years of experience, the competence rating flats out. What, however, caught my attention was average experience of Indians is only 7.1 years. So basically what it means is at the very early stage itself, Indians tend to get out of development role and pursue something else. They become either manager or product owner or something different. So I somehow feel that even before Indians typically reach 15 years of experience in the developer role, they move out of developer role. So that is why probably we don't have enough experienced developers more than 15 or 20, 25 years of experience as developers in India. I think this has always been my long held belief that in India we lack mentorship for the developer roles. Since there are not enough experienced developers or highly experienced developers, developers with say 20 or 25 years of experience, you can't mentor the upcoming talent, and people who do actually get into coding pretty much within 10 years of experience move out of developer roles and become managers or something else or architects or something like that. There is a dearth of developers who do hardcore hands-on coding in India even after say around 20 or 25 years of experience. So I think this is something probably we have to look at to improving India. The next part is the technology trends, basically talking about which frameworks, which programming languages, which technologies are being used among the developers or in demand, or they see that they will have a demand for the future. So let's have a look at that. So as expected, JavaScript frameworks are at the peak here. So once again, JavaScript, HTML5, Java still is in the top 10. And in terms of the web frameworks, it is once again the JavaScript based frameworks, jQuery, Angular, React.js, which take the major piece of the cake. And when it comes to frameworks and libraries, it is once again JavaScript based things like Node.js, React Native, and also other than that, you see .NET Core. I see TensorFlow, which is a artificial intelligence framework, and you also see React Native. And there is a mention of Cordova, Xamarin, Flutter, which are cross platforms. Other than that, in terms of the databases, MySQL takes the major cake here. But if you see some of the major databases that get mentioned here, Firebase, MongoDB, they are all NoSQL databases. SQLite, which is a mobile database which we typically use in iOS and Android application development. So they are majorly being used by the developers. Even the Coach base, which is a NoSQL database. Then comes the most loved, dreaded, and wanted languages. The most loved language seems to be Rust, and of course the usual suspect, which is Python, Kotlin, which is a different flavor of a Java programming language, and then there is a Swift. It is interesting to see that Java comes somewhere very down below in the overall ranking. And then in terms of the dreaded VBA, Visual Basic Application, and it is no wonder that Objective-C gets mentioned at the top. Objective-C was the programming language for iOS development before Apple decided to go ahead and change its primary programming language to Swift. Swift becomes one of the most important language, replacing Objective-C. And then comes to most wanted, the ones which are in demand. And once again, it is Python which takes the cake, which is not at all surprising, especially because of the emphasis for machine learning where Python is typically used. And then, since JavaScript based frameworks are used quite a lot, JavaScript gets mentioned at the top. Somewhere down the line, Java gets mentioned. Then comes the most loved and wanted web frameworks, and it is all client-side JavaScript frameworks like React.js, which take the cake in both loved and wanted web frameworks. So you can see that JavaScript is a major programming language or framework that is dominating the programming world as of now. Then comes frameworks and libraries. .NET Core seems to be at the top, and then there is a cross-platform Flutter, Google's cross-platform Node.js, which is a JavaScript framework for server-side scripting, and then TensorFlow, machine learning framework. So you will see quite a number of usual suspects, and mainly from the mobile application development point of view, Xamarin, which is a C# based Microsoft cross-platform, gets mentioned somewhere down in the below, and Cordova gets mentioned in the below. I think main reason is React Native is replacing Cordova majorly as a primary cross-platform development framework. If you had seen this chart few years back, Cordova would have been at the top, but now you see that it has come down, and React Native, which is Facebook's framework for developing cross-platform applications, is taking by the storm. And then in terms of the most popular development environments, it is Visual Studio Code, which should not be surprised because it is basically the JavaScript based frameworks which are dominating the development world. And most popular development environment is Android Studio, Visual Studio Code, which are all related to front-end development tools. And in terms of the development environments, SREs and DevOps, it is Visual Studio Code. VSTS seems to be making a major inroad here. From the mobile applications perspective, it is Visual Studio Code that gets mentioned, and then Android Studio, Xcode, Atom. Those are some of the things probably you would like to have a look at. And then when it comes to primary operating systems that developers tend to use, contrary to the popular belief, it is still Windows, not Mac OS. And then comes people's view about the coding profession itself. So what languages are associated with highest salaries worldwide? Java is down below the stack. So I think probably the Java talent pool is very easily available talent pools, because at the end of the day it is supply and demand. More the developers in a particular programming language, lesser the demand will be, or at least it will be easy to find the developers for that particular programming language or the framework. So Java seems to be the most easily available talent pool, and it has been there in existence for quite long time now. So I think you see that Java salaries are pretty low compared to some of the other programming languages. Swift and Kotlin definitely seem to be above Java, and then Python, because it is mainly now being associated with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and neural networks. And then there are some of the programming languages even which I have not heard, like Clojure or F#. Please share your comments about if you have used them and what is your experience of having used those programming languages. And for the United States, it aligns with what the global trends are. Only the difference is here Java gets mentioned slightly above than at the end of the stack. Another important visual representation which I really liked in the survey was the way different frameworks and programming languages are related to one another. So this video has been sponsored by Stevens English Education. If you think you are in need of a one-on-one personalized English teaching lessons from a professional teacher, then you are in for a useful information. Well, regardless of whether you are a developer or not, communication and articulation skills are most important skills that you will need to develop. Justin Stevens, who is the owner of the website Stevens English Education, is a professional teacher who provides various teaching services to the students, professionals, and business executives. He has been doing it for the long time, and you can actually go to his website and see for his credentials, For the students, he helps them prepare for exams like IELTS, TOEFL, CELP-TIPS, SSAT and SAT and state exams. So he offers a lot of services if you want to improve your English language. You can go to another link where you can schedule a 1 hour trial with him, and then if you really want to go ahead and book the services, you can actually use the referral link provided below. You will get a $25 off when you click on this particular link and register yourself with lessons with him. So you can see that the Swift, Objective-C, Xcode, iOS, Android, Firebase, this is pretty much all mobile application development landscape. I would even add Flutter and Dart to this because they are primarily used as a cross-platform development tool for the mobile application. They could have added this here, but I think probably this is automatically generated. The tool couldn't figure this out, and that is why you see this as a separate island here. So in that sense, Microsoft has its own major clutch of technologies which are tightly coupled. Another major island is Python. From Python, you can move a huge number of technologies and frameworks where you can employ Python as the programming language. So mobile application development is not bad. There are quite a number of things that you can do. So if you are an Android, you can learn cross-platform, and then you can also learn native iOS and then Flutter and Dart to basically cover the complete demography of mobile application development. Another interesting statistics to have a look at was how confident are developers in their managers. So looks like 80% of the people are pretty happy with their managers. And then do developers need to become managers to make more money? At least developers seem to think that it is not necessary. And then do developers want to become managers in the future? Looks like most of the people don't want to become, or at least are undecided to pursue this line of career. I would like to hear from you guys who are developers or managers about this statistic. And the then most interesting part was how long did developers last change the jobs. So most of the people are less than 1 year ago. I think as expected, this should not be a surprise. Our developer field is such that job changes are very frequent. So this statistics should not come as a surprise at all for most of the people, if you are a developer at least. Then comes the most important factors for the job. So this they have basically divided into three categories: men, women, and then non-binary. So for men, it is the languages, frameworks, and other technologies that matter the most in the work environment. And for women, it is the office environment and the company culture. It doesn't mean that for men it doesn't matter. It just takes the next most important slot here. And the same applies with the non-binary group. They tend to be in this agreement with women. Then comes behaviors of the people in the work environment. So how often do developers work remotely? I would like to hear from you people. You can just comment your country and how often do you work remotely, and how structured is the work for the developers. Most of the developers tend to agree that there is some schedule and they stick to schedule in their work environment, which is good to see, and I would say that I would agree with it. So where do developers want to work, whether it is work from home or work from office? Most of the people prefer to work from office rather than work from home. In case of Indians especially, they are even above the global standard, and I think most of the Indian companies don't have work from home option. Very few companies have, or at least it is less than some of the other countries. So that is why we see this particular statistics in Indians case is slightly more skewed towards office than towards home. So I would like to hear from you guys. Do you have work from home policy in your office? And if you have, how often do you avail it? And what basically drives your preference? And then comes the overall hours people spend development. So everything is pretty much in terms of average hours that you spend in your office. Most of it is in 40s or early 40s, until and unless you are a senior executive or a VP, where it tends to go really higher up. And in terms of the country, Poland, India, United States, they are in the higher 40s than the Netherlands or United Kingdom, which are on an average less than 40. And I can say that coming from India, it doesn't surprise me that India comes little bit in the higher top for the average hours that are spent in office. And then the greatest challenge is to productivity. Distracting office environment seems to be the major concern for most of the people, and this I have seen across different demographics, that is men, women, and non-binary. Pretty much everybody says that the distracting work environment is the major problem. And then meetings being tasked with non-development work, not enough people for the workload. So it was very interesting to see, and I actually wanted to cross check whether how people here in India feel. So I actually pretty much did a survey on this on my channel. Of course, the total number of people who responded was very less, but I would say that whatever the response that I got was in alignment with what you are seeing here. It is interesting to see that the work environment where we are supposed to work itself is so much distracting that it is a major productivity challenge. The open office environment where people don't get isolated environment to concentrate is one of the major problem. You typically see these floors where people sit around, chat around, talk loud, are always on the call. That kind of becomes very distracting for the developers at least. I think it's no wonder that people have placed distracting work environment is the major reason for their productivity challenge. I would like to hear your opinion on this. What do you feel about it? And then comes, this was very interesting to look at, basically the kind of music people listen to while coding. Most of the developers are from the Western world, so you see all of these jazz, Beethoven, Bach. But what I found very funny was Arjit Singh represented as two different points. If you are an Indian or at least from subcontinent, you would know that Arjit Singh is one single person. And then comes in terms of the salary and experience by the developer type. So you can see that the mobile developers are definitely in the lower strata in terms of the overall years of experience and the salary group they typically fall in. And it is the DevOps specialists and SREs are in the higher salaried people. So if you are a mobile developer and if you want to move up the ladder in terms of say salary, probably you can become a front-end developer, not just a mobile developer. So React.js, React Native, and then become a complete full stack developer. And then comes the salary and experience by the language. That is basically which programming language you use, and based on that, how many years of experience you have and what is the median salary. So once again, Java is not very high, as I said earlier, because Java talent pool is easily available. I'm not saying that all Java developers get paid very poorly, but at least from the statistics point of view, this is what it looks like. Probably if you want to move up from Java, probably you can become a Kotlin developer, and if you are into say mobile application and front-end development, then you definitely need to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Swift. So those kind of things to slightly move above the ladder in terms of the salary that you might get offered. And of course, there are Go and Scala. I would like to hear at least from people who are using these programming languages in their career. What has been their experience? Anybody used Clojure and F Sharp? What is their experience like? Because I at least personally have not met anybody who have used these frameworks and programming languages. So it would be interesting to hear from you guys. So with this, I basically end the main important statistics that I had observed and my interpretation of the statistics. Please feel free to comment and share your thoughts on some of the things that you saw in the video. And if you want to yourself want to go through the contents, I will have provided the link down below in the description section. That is much more elaborate. They have even provided you with the CSV file you can download and you can run that through your own interpretation engine or any kind of analytics tool to understand and come out with new kind of interpretations with the available data. Hopefully, you liked this particular video. Definitely will meet you with the regular tutorial series pretty soon. Stay tuned. Bye. That brings us to the end of this particular video. Don't forget to like, comment, share the video and subscribe to the channel. Take care. Bye.